I got a phone call from a dear friend of mine who's in the leadership of the Republican Party. He called me that morning panicked. He said he had seen on the internet 4, 5, 6 busloads of people coming to the convention. Saw the fact that we had over 200 people signed up to be on the floor. He said he was concerned that we were going to take over the convention. He was worried that there was going to be violence or whatever. And I told him, I said, look, I just want to introduce you to a couple of my friends. He wasn't amused. He wasn't amused. But after we won, yeah. Some other policy issues. We need to repeal Obamacare. Obamacare out. Tort reform. Tort reform. Both Mississippi and Texas have passed tort reform. Claims dropped 91% in Mississippi, 87% in Texas. And there were rebates on premiums. Let's talk about Homeland Security for a moment. The governor of Arizona steps up. Passes state legislation to get the federal government to enforce its own laws. Senator Schumer sends her a note saying, I'd like you to consider this and wait for a year while we work on this. Thanks, Chuck. Please. Phoenix, Arizona had 300 kidnappings last year, ladies and gentlemen. 300. Same number as Kabul, Afghanistan. The same number as Kabul, Afghanistan. It is heartbreaking. Who's being kidnapped? Latins are being kidnapped. Some of them illegal, some of them citizens. We have a responsibility to defend all of our citizens. Every one of them. The failure to secure the border is not a failure just to defend against illegal immigration. It's a failure to defend against 6 or 7 of the most dangerous narco-trafficking cartels in the world. The Sonoma cartel, the Beltran cartel, Ariana Felix, Los Zetas. Los Zetas were a group of individuals, Mexican military that we brought to the United States, trained them to fight narco-traffickers. They went back and defected en masse over to the narco-traffickers. They were working with the Ariana Felix cartel for a while, providing muscle to them. Now they've gone out on their own. These groups shoot, move, and communicate. They're dangerous. They have billions of dollars. They pay bribes on the Mexican side. They are bribing people on the American side as well. I have to say this, that when I look at South Korea, and I see that we have second division there, I don't like where they're sitting because I don't want them in the gun sights of the North Koreans. I would pull them from South Korea, and I would place them on the border with Mexico. If they're going to guard the border, let them guard ours. People forget, the world changes. I'm not just talking about pulling out of South Korea. We're going to still leave air power there in the South to help them. And we want to have a quick reaction force to intervene. But what sort of gain is there from leaving tens of thousands of our soldiers in the sights of 20 battalions of North Korean artillery and lose them in the first round as a tripwire? That's not how we should be using our sons and daughters.
That's right.
But we need to be but back to the border. First thing I'll do, first bill I will write, is a bill to continue building a double white fence from one end to the other on that border. I am willing to, and I understand national security. I've spent my life, my family have spent their life vested in national security. We are wasting unbelievable amounts of money in the military. See Steve LeBay shaking his head. The two of us know. There is waste, fraud, and abuse of enormous proportion. If elected to the Senate, I'm going to do everything possible to bring down those costs. I'm going to shrink the size of our defense bill significantly. We're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars per gallon of gasoline by bringing this stuff out of the Persian Gulf and trucking it up through Pakistan. We could be getting this stuff from Turkmenistan. There's no fuel coming out of Turkmenistan, which is only about a 200-mile ride on a train. Unbelievable stuff. We could be getting a lot more fuel out of Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and not having problems with our lines being blown up. We got locked into one mode, and they just kept going. They just opened up a northern route for resupply of that. The Afghan war is the longest supply line in human history for a conflict, ladies and gentlemen. It is. It is now the longest war in American history. I help lead us in. I will help find a solution for this so we can get our troops off the battlefield at the earliest possible date in Afghanistan. My vision of Afghanistan, and I'm going to tell you something, and I'm not a cut and run guy, trust me. Right now we've got ISAF forces over here, right? International Security Assistance Forces. $1 million per year per soldier. Those are our costs. Over here we have the Afghans, $135 a month. Can't feed their families. I would create a third force in the middle. I would call it the Freedom Corps. It would be Americans, British, Australian officers leading every man that fights is an Afghan, and I'd make sure they got paid $1,000 a month. I would create a middle class that way. And if I stood those brigades up, I would take our brigades off the battlefield. I don't need my son or your sons or daughters doing 3 and 4 tours out there. It's not what they're supposed to be doing. We have paid a heavy price in the world. The world is a dangerous place. After 9/11, we were forced to go out and fight them. Iraq was a complicated problem. Saddam was evil. Ultimately, he would have created weapons of mass destruction. I know the whole question is, did we find them, did we not find them? He had them multiple times. We destroyed them several times. He was going to go back. Whether or not they found them or not, I'm telling you, Saddam was going back for it. He even said so before he died in interviews. When we look at national security, we've got a world of asymmetric threats. What does that mean? Small numbers of people can leverage technology with a lethal effect. That's what we had on 9/11. We leveraged the technology of commercial aircraft and brought down those buildings. This is something that you can't guard against with a normal army. You have to have security services, whether they're CIA or FBI, groups like that. They have to pay for this, sort of these non-traditional security organizations. We have to go outside this country and fight them in places like, and penetrate those organizations, get reporting on them and run them down in places like Yemen and Pakistan and Afghanistan. We don't need 100,000 people in Afghanistan to do that. We don't. When we went into Afghanistan in the beginning, we went in with 110 CIA officers and 350 special forces. We defeated 60,000 members of the Taliban, ladies and gentlemen, in the first run. We don't need to be there headed. Iraq was a little different. We're drawing down in Iraq. I will be happy when we have most of our people out of Iraq. Talk about Hezbollah and the threats to Israel. I support the state of Israel. I support the right state of Israel and the right for self-defense. How do you negotiate with people like Hamas and Hezbollah that will not acknowledge your right to exist? Very difficult. The Israelis are in a very, very tough bind. And I know that the media, and I know the Obama administration, is preparing to throw them under the bus. They really are. Not supportive of them. It's unfortunate. Talked about Iran already. When you look at the world, you look at the last 20 years, 30 years, I look back and I think that the United States, as Steve LeBate stated before, was a great liberator. The greatest liberator in the last 50 years was